I like to define leadership as the intentional act of using your healthy control and your deliberate influence with others.
Welcome to Leading Without the BS. Unfiltered, unapologetic, unstoppable performance.
Hi, and welcome to Leading Without the BS. I'm Mike Johnson. I am the newest advisor on the Wingspan team.
Hey, I'm Ivan Konermann. I'm the vice president and also an advisor at Wingspan. So in our last conversation, I had the awesome opportunity to get to interview Mike and learn about his background and help people understand what not only he's bringing to the table for experience, also to hear some of the things that he's seen that he is connecting now to the Wingspan tools. So today we decided to flip the script.
Yeah, and today is my opportunity to put Ivan in the hot seat and ask some questions of him and leverage all the experience that he has as a long-term advisor at Wingspan.
Yeah. So what you got for me?
All right, so with that, we'll jump right in. What are a couple of the biggest ahas you've had since you started doing this?
The one thing that sticks out to me the most is, and I'm a big analogy guy. Sometimes I'm sure my clients are a little like, okay, dude, bring it down to one or two to use. The piece I would offer here is it's really about fundamentals. And so, for example, when I actually met Kathy, I was her shooting coach. That's how we met. I was the captain of a pistol team, and I was working at the range one day on some things. And Kathy and her brother and a friend came in to shoot. And one of the things I was really big on as an instructor was breaking things down into fundamental chunks and then practicing those very specific chunks. So if it was just getting the pistol on the target and getting the sights lined up, just doing that by itself and then pulling it back and doing that again and again, or just working the trigger, nothing in it, just working the trigger. And so that translates really cleanly into this in terms of how easy it is to take something and go, oh my gosh, that's super complicated and there's all these steps. Well, in reality, there's very specific pieces. And if people slow down and go, oh, wait a minute, I can practice this piece and I can practice this piece and I can practice this piece in isolation, then they can get really good and then string them together, and that accelerates people's progress so much.
Yeah. How often do you find that those analogies help the clients that you're working with hone in on the skills that they're working on? Yeah,
usually they seem to. Okay. Sometimes I can tell. I'll throw it out, and people are kind of and I'm like, okay, let me change gears. I actually had one the other day where I said to a leader, "Are you more Star Wars or are you more on the Harry Potter side of the house?" And he said Star Trek, and I was like, shit, I don't have a good Star Trek analogy for what I'm about to say. So I was flat-footed there. Yes, so I'm looking for one on that front.
All right, good. How do you define leadership?
In the military, we had a long and overly complicated definition of leadership, and it involved a bunch of things that were very specific to that workflow. Now I have shamelessly stolen a definition from a lady. I don't remember her name. She wrote a book a few years ago, and I heard her on a podcast. Brilliant. And she simply, and we've modified it a little bit. So I like to define leadership as the intentional act of using your healthy control and your deliberate influence with others. So when I break it down that way, it's not about just what am I doing relative to other people. It's also how am I using my healthy control of myself. We've all seen, and hell, I know I've done, and from our conversation a few days ago, you've certainly done some of this too, of getting out of that healthy space and into some spots where it wasn't healthy. And so keeping it into that space and then being deliberate with influence, regardless of your title, regardless of your formal role or how many folks report to you or don't report to you, that's not the issue. We've all seen leaders who didn't have quote unquote formal direct reports, and man, they wielded incredible influence in an organization.
Yeah. Title doesn't always equal leadership capabilities. And you can be a leader without a title. Those are leading with influence. When people come to you for guidance, it's exciting to see that type of leadership as well.
Yeah.
How have you had others or heard others define leadership as an advisor?
Yeah, it's actually one of my questions I'll keep handy depending on where a conversation is going. So sometimes people they'll talk about leadership and it's obvious they're thinking of it in a certain way. And so I'll ask, I say, well, how are you defining it? And oftentimes what folks will do is they'll get to what I would think of as components. So if you look at my definition, there are, just like I said before, there are these building blocks underneath there of how do I use my healthy control to deliberately influence someone else? Well, that could be through my language. It could be through my questions. It could be through what I choose to not say sometimes. And that's where a lot of people will focus in on, it's inspiring, it's setting a clear vision, it's seeing into the future and determining what our strategy is going to be. Sure, those are all parts of it. It's just those are individual pieces instead of saying, how do we define this as an entity?
Yeah, well said. Okay. Switching gears just a little bit, what are some of the surprising commonalities that you see in the different clients that you work with? Yeah,
it's a good question. The thing that sticks out the most is that we're all creatures of habit. We and myself included, and you as well. We all work to figure out how to handle a situation, and then when we look at another situation, we go, whether we realize it or not, we often go, that's just like situation A. I'm going to use this thing to handle that situation, only we don't realize how sometimes that situation evolves over time, or now that situation is actually substantially different. And so then the tools we're bringing to the table don't fit. And I've certainly realized this on myself where I'm sometimes really frustrated, and I'm probably not exactly saying to myself, I don't know what the fuck is going on because this worked 6 months ago or 6 years ago. And I'm confident in the back of my head somewhere that thought's going on because I know I'm frustrated and I'm confused. I'm like, I don't get it. What's not happening here? And so that unawareness of patterns is the number one thing. It's absolutely the number one thing of how much we create routines for ourselves.
Yeah. That reminds me of the conversations that I have with my kids. Having a daughter and a son, slightly different ages. The same messaging doesn't work with each of them in the same situation. What I view as similar situations or the same situation. I actually heard a recent video of a gentleman. I can't remember what he does, but he was speaking about no child is raised in the same home.
Interesting.
Every situation is different. There's been a time outside in the world. What's changed in the family dynamic, what's happening in each of those situations. And it reminds me of a little bit what you're mentioning here, where it's that specific person in that specific situation in that specific time.
And it's so easy as people. We are literally hardwired to create efficiencies. That's how our brain works because it takes so much juice for this mental muscle to solve a problem that we work to be really efficient and effective, and so we like to create those patterns, and it's just a way of recognizing that. I'd say a second thing is how often people wait for permission. And so for me that was a little extra surprising because in having been quote unquote raised in the military, very much expected to go off and do it. Just in civilian parlance, that'd be more of an entrepreneurial spirit. Don't wait for permission. Tell somebody, hey, I'm going to go do X, and then ask for forgiveness, or tell them, hey, if I'm going to go do X unless you tell me not to. Freaking go get them, Tiger. So that mindset was what I was used to. So now it's interesting to see how often people are, well, I'm going to wait and ask, and I'm like, no, man, just what would happen if you went for it? You just told your boss, hey, I'm going to go do this, unless you tell me otherwise. And it's funny to see how often people will shift and go, well, dang, I never thought of it that way. And I was like, well, okay, good. And what kind of risk are you actually taking? Because that's where I don't want to make assumptions about what the risk is for them, with their manager on that thing. So it's also where I get to realize the habit and the patterns. I recognize them myself, and then also not want to extend those onto them.
What are some of the situations that you see leaders ask for permission?
The biggest one is where there's a problem, and instead of, so for example, I had a leader, within the past week, and I'm losing, doesn't matter, losing track of the days, who said, I want to get together with my peers at these other locations, and I want to solve this problem. And I said, because this person had told their manager, hey, I want you to get all of these group peers together. I said, how come you're asking your boss to get together with your peers?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man.
Yeah.
It was so funny how quickly he was like, and he's a really good leader. He immediately got it. He was like, dang it. He's like, I'm just gonna go do it. I said, absolutely. What is your manager gonna say other than, cool, you thought that was a good choice? Rock on, man. Absolutely, no problem. So it's that waiting for permission, and what I encourage people to do is to think about it more from the perspective of, again, how big of a risk is it? Because if it's a small risk, be bolder. If it's a bigger risk, then it's up to you to choose and make that thoughtful decision.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this for quite a while now. We talked about how this is new to me. You have a lot of experiences, built a lot of relationships, and sharing that with me has shown the knowledge that you built over the course of your time as a leadership advisor and a leader in general. Knowing you've been doing this for quite a while, what still excites you about doing that type of coaching?
Yeah, it is absolutely positively when I get on a call with a leader and or a team, and one of two things happens. One is the team is operating in a way where, even though it's the session that I'm running, they're doing so much of it on their own. Like, they're prompting each other, they're stepping in, they're challenging each other and asking each other really good questions. And that's where it's kind of like I've been pushing with this group to get them going. And this is my favorite team in Pennsylvania. You know who you are when you're listening. They get up and they get rolling. It is so freaking awesome to see that they're running. Again, it's kind of like that. It's like they're pulling against the harness and just wanting to go, and how they're working with each other. That is so cool. It is so rewarding. The other thing is on the individual basis, when people come in and they've had this gnarly or meaty problem and they've been working to figure it out and going, I'm not sure how to do this and I don't know what to do with that, and so we'll talk through it, and then they'll have really good notes, and sometimes I'll even role play it with them. And it's funny how often people will, when I say, okay, we're going to role play this, I'm going to be Sally or George or whoever it is, and I'll see their eyes kind of pop like, oh shit, you mean right now? I'm like, absolutely. Get your crappy first swings with the bat. Get those out with me, because there's no cost. This is a very safe place. It's like, that way you're going to know. You're going to be a lot much more confident when you step into the conversation with that person, exactly how you want to do this. And so then when they do that, and then they come back to that next call, and I was like, hey, how did it go when you talked to George or Sally? And they're so pumped up. They're like, oh man, it was the friggin' best. I did this. And a lot of times it's funny how often people will get concerned. They care about that person. They care deeply about the relationship and about the professional bonds that they have, and they want to maintain that. And what they often tell themselves are stories, and hell, I do it too, of, I don't want to be the jerk, I don't want to be the bad guy. And I was like, of course you don't, and of course you won't. It's just a matter of how you prepare to go into that exchange. And then they do that, and they go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I'm like, it's not because you prepared. You took the time to get your notes together, to get your headspace straight on how do you really want to show up. And man, that is just, I get goosebumps when I go into conversations with people and they share that, because it is so freaking cool. It is so cool.
Asking that question and then seeing your body language physically change, the excitement exudes from you of sharing in those wins with the team. So that's really neat to see. And that team that you called out, I'm sure will be excited to hear that as well. So,
a lot of people, they know who they are.
So we talked about what excites you. How do you continue to challenge yourself in this capacity?
Yeah, it's a spot where, like any role, there are almost, I'm going to use a rough analogy, if there's these steps. Ooh, I want to get to where I've got this kind of proficiency, or I'm proficient to this level in these areas. Okay, good, I've got that. And then keep climbing and adding more and more. And so now I've been doing this for long enough where I very rarely hear something for the first time. I've had folks cry. I've had folks get pissed off and frustrated. I've had folks who have wanted to run away because they're not comfortable. So for me, where I'm at and where I work to keep challenging myself is, how do I continue to broaden the set of situations where I can be really effective, not just okay, where I can be really effective. And that means, for me, it means really dialing in my intentionality and also dialing in my level of intensity. A lot of folks, when I am a high energy person normally, and so what can be challenging is in some situations that actually is a problem. And so for me, it's being much more aware and deliberate around what's going to help this person around this thing right now, and then how, in a healthy, productive way, and then how do I bring that to the table? And in some cases, it's a smaller stretch. In some cases, it's a bigger stretch.
And how does that align with the leaders that we work with? So when you were thinking about how you challenge yourself to grow, how can you spin that to help people, our listeners and the clients and leaders, think about how they might be challenging themselves?
Yeah. Great question. It's in exactly the same way. So I'll offer the analogy of oftentimes when people think about using a tool, like, oh, I want to ask better questions, or I want to learn how to hold someone accountable, which are very simple, very common things that people focus on. They're deceptively simple. They're also surprisingly difficult to master. And that's where I would say it's just like when you're starting a kid playing baseball and you put the little baseball on top of the tee, and that way they get to wail away at that darn thing. It's a lot like that, to where when they get those first hits, then it's, okay, how do you get them up to the spot where they're continuing to prepare for more and more difficult conversations, prepare for conversations where they want to bring a range of intensity. A lot of folks are in the, what I jokingly call the work appropriate mode of a level 2 to a level 4 intensity. And they rarely stay out of that. They rarely stray out of that. And so what happens is people see their manager at either lower intensity or their medium intensity, which is very close. And the manager isn't effectively communicating enough. We understand, I don't remember the numbers, it's some absurdly small percentage, like 7% of the message by the literal words that someone's saying or that we're reading. We understand the other 93% or whatever the number is through cadence, through all the nonverbal, the hand gestures, the how the face is animated, all those kinds of things. And that's where when somebody comes in at this really moderate level or low to moderate level of intensity, and they're not getting the message across, what I say to them is, man, this is a spot for you to pop open that range to get into those higher intensity spaces. And it doesn't mean standing up and yelling or doing anything that's not honest for them. It does mean, though, working to figure out, what is that going to look like for you? How are you going to raise intensity as a leader in a healthy, productive way to get people's attention when you are at a 7 and you want them to be at a 7 or maybe even at an 8?
Yeah.
How well does that answer your question?
Great. That's what I was looking for. Tying it back for people listening, it's interesting to hear your perspective as an advisor, but also how can they or we as leaders leverage those same skill sets, those same tools in our everyday business to drive business results for our organizations.
Yeah, and it's the number one thing I encourage leaders to do is, I'll say, every single day, first thing when you get into the office, before you turn on emails or chats or all the other things, then your attention just goes into the seemingly black hole. I'll tell them, open your calendar and look at your calendar, and then pick one conversation in the morning. Could even be an email, or what's one conversation or email that you're going to handle in the afternoon. And then I'll encourage them, before you get into everything else and you start to get pulled or start to go in a bunch of directions, really be thoughtful about how do you want to show up for that. What is it you're working to do in each of those exchanges? What level of intensity do you want to bring to that? How do you want to convey that level of intensity through your words, through your nonverbal. That is the kind of preparation where when people really stop and do that, it shows up in our conversations that fast because it is so much more obvious in the stories that they tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about leadership philosophy, some of the biggest aha moments that you've had since becoming a leadership advisor, and definitely conveying what still excites you.
Yeah.
What other aspects of Wingspan and or your experience as an advisor do you want to share with the audience?
The thing that surprised me the most when I first started to talk to Kathy many years ago was this concept of shifting out of technical performance and into behavioral performance. And I have a conversation I'm remembering with a leader I work with, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he was frustrated with his team and with some of this is the way his team was showing up. And he said, I'm going to go tell him X, Y, Z. And as he said it, I had in my head like, man, there's no way he didn't tell those guys this already. So I said, hold on a second. And I said, hey, man, how many times have you told him that exact message already? And he stopped and he goes, man, probably 15. And then I said, so what's going to change when you say it the 16th time? And it hit him like a 10-pound brick, man. He just stops and he goes, shit. He goes, that is such a good point. I go, you don't have a technical problem. You have a behavioral problem. And so that was where, like, for him, it just clicked that fast. And that's what I hope people listening to this will get is if you're doing something again and again and again, it's not, or you're working to get someone else to do something differently and you're having that conversation again and again and again. It's not that they don't understand, probably not, what to do. It's they're either not choosing to do it, they're not asking questions, they're not speaking up as they're running into problems and getting some steering or some help. And so separating that technical from the behavioral piece has been absolutely eye-opening. Now, when I'm working with leaders, and I'll often ask them, what portion of this problem is technical? What portion of this problem is behavioral? And man, it is crazy how often they're going 80% behavioral all day long.
Yeah.
All day long.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, this has been really insightful for me, and I'm hoping that our leaders are getting some really quick points from this that they can take away, other than just looking at two bald guys.
That is a treat. That is a treat. Let's not kid ourselves.
So we've talked about a lot of things today, and thank you for the insight. It's very helpful for me. And I'm sure that it's very helpful for our listeners as well. I hope so. We've talked about a few things today that I want to make sure that we shine some additional light on. Patterns created for good reasons, figuring them out, observing those patterns that you see in those behavioral patterns. Technical versus behavioral performance.
Huge.
You mentioned again, time and time and again, people deferring that, hey, this is not a technical gap. It's a behavioral opportunity that we're gonna focus on, and then foundational nature of the skills that we equip our clients with. Basic blocks, activating language, advancing questions, and building off of those, and continuing to think about different scenarios. This person, this situation, in this instance.
Also been real fast. So for folks listening or watching, that's where I encourage you as you're looking at a challenge you've got. Mary Beth isn't doing that, or William isn't doing this. Ask yourself how much of this is a technical thing versus how much of this is a behavioral thing. Because if you realize you've explained it several times, it's now in the behavioral space. And then the last piece is practicing. So I encourage everyone listening to just pick one thing and start to practice it. Even if it's just once or twice a day, I'm going to prepare better questions. I'm going to write out what I want to say to get somebody's attention around this thing. And then I'm really going to wordsmith it to make sure it's accurate, to make sure it's tight. That kind of practice doesn't sound fun and sexy, and I totally get it. I'll also tell you that's how people get good. One of the things that Kath and I connected on when we first met up was I was a master class shooter, and I became a master class shooter because I would get up every morning at 4:30, drink a half a pot of coffee, which is how come I have heart problems now. And then I would go do drills. I would go work with the pistol to get really comfortable with it. And it over time, those little incremental steps, those little gains, man, they just add up. And before long, there's things that I realized didn't even require thinking. I was just knocking them out, and that's the way you want to be with these tools, is getting to the point where they're so comfortable, you can confidently roll into a situation and go, oh, I want to ask a question here, or I want to make a statement there, or do this kind of a thing. Yeah. And having those reps in is really what it takes.
The way I visualize that is I'm not reaching into a bag looking for a tool. I have those tools readily available. The more efficient that you become with them,
I like that.
You know what to use, when to use it, and to your point, without consciously thinking about it in some scenarios.
Yeah, or without consciously thinking about it as much. So I don't want to paint the picture of we're not thinking. We certainly are. It is, though, that more comfortable, more ready to use tool that you can bring to the table, still being choosy about where and when it makes sense.
Good. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
Awesome. Yeah, you bet. Awesome. So for everyone listening or watching, start putting these things into practice, and you'll be leading without the BS. 2 ball guys. Signing out.